Welcome to the Taste of Tewksbury cooking show. Today we are very excited to introduce our state representative for Tewksbury and Wilmington, David Robinson. And he is going to prepare a dish for us that he prepares for his family and that they really enjoy. In fact, I made it for my husband and myself the other day, and it's delicious and really simple. And you can have the ingredients on hand. You can have the kielbasa in the freezer and have the other ingredients are in your cupboard. And it's good to fix for a quick meal if you have company drop in unexpected, which sometimes we do, by the way.
That is.
But I will ask you to show us now. That's some of the steps that go into
Absolutely.
this.
You know, Joe, thank you for inviting me on this show. And as I was thinking of what to make, and I noticed the temperature dropping, and I think despite what some people holding on for summer want to deny, the leaves turning, my thoughts kind of went fallish. So this is, like you said, is a very simple recipe. Yeah. It has 5 ingredients, which you might have on hand, and we're going to make an apple cinnamon kielbasa dish today. The best part of it, I think, is like you said, if there's unintended guests coming through, it's made in about 25 minutes to maybe a half hour. So again, like you said, very, very simple. We have brown sugar, cinnamon, apple juice, apples themselves, and kielbasa. That's all we need for this. So I'm going to ask you first to help me prepare the kielbasa. It's just a 16-ounce package. Everyone might have their favorite brand. You can pick them up at any of our local grocery stores in the area. And the first thing we're going to do, and I'll ask for your help, is to prepare these into medallion size.
Sure, we'd glad to help you. Thank you. Okay.
So you can do varying thicknesses, but the beauty of this recipe, and what I really enjoy, again, other than it's kind of the fall theme and the fall taste, is that the brown sugar kind of takes the spice out of the kielbasa a little bit.
It's delicious. So delicious. And I know you serve it over mashed sweet potato, and sometimes you serve it over mashed white potato.
That's right. I
Whatever
eat
you
just
have
about,
in hand, yeah.
I eat just about anything, but sweet potatoes is one of the ones the world has yet to still sell me on. So I prefer your normal white potato. You can tell I'm not a culinary expert, so whatever that would actually be called. But the recipe traditionally calls for a mashed sweet potato to kind of continue that fall theme and variation. And it makes a good pairing. The whole theme of this is kind of brown sugar, maple syrup, and sweetness. And I'll tell you, it really, when it starts getting a little cold out, and maybe you have some yard work to do in that, it's a nice dish to come in and warm up to at the end of the day.
Now, David, you just mentioned maple syrup, so do you sometimes put maple syrup in it too?
Only once, and that was a bit of an experiment. That was a little departure.
Was it good?
It was menza. Okay. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world.
Okay.
But that's what like I said, this recipe, it's so simple. There's really not too much variation that you want to do on it. So now we have the medallions cut. I should have maybe done it a little thinner because we're looking for surface area to balance it out, but this will suffice. So for our next step, we'll make the broth they'll simmer in. So we'll take the half cup of brown sugar and kind of spread it out over the bottom of the pan equally.
Okay.
It's important, and this is why it's only over medium heat. It's the brown sugar, as kind of congeals, for lack of a better word, and we don't want to have one lump and sit there. We're looking for an even coating. So now that we have the half cup spread across the bottom, it's time to put in the 1/4 cup of apple juice. So I'll just fill up about half of this. And I know we were talking before, and you said that you had put in a little bit more than
I did. I probably put in twice as much, and it made more of a sauce to go on top of the potatoes.
Which I think is a great idea. It's one I might steal down the line making this back at home.
Well, when you've been cooking as long as I have, you'll experiment with different things.
And then the last part here is the 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I brag that usually I don't have, like I said before we were talking before the show, not too many things that I won't eat.
David, do you want me to take that off?
Please,
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
be so kind. Help me out.
Here you go.
But I remember once I ate too many cinnamon fireballs. So
Oh,
now,
gosh, yeah.
now I have an aversion to cinnamon, so I'm very precise with this. It's funny what sticks with you when you're growing up as a kid.
So how much are you putting in?
Just what the recipe calls, 1 tablespoon.
Okay.
So there's that. Good job. And then we're going to take and just, again, blend it. So to clear our space on the cutting board, we'll add in your and my medallions. So that way we can then chop the apples to size.
Okay, so we're going to do that now.
That's right.
Okay.
As this cooks, the chunks in that will even out in flavor, and you can already see the brown sugar and cinnamon coating the bottom of the pan. Once we start cooking and stirring, that will then coat the kielbasa and giving that sweetness and taking the edge off.
So now
We're going to add in the medallions. So this, later on, as we're cooking, we're going to mix it and coat everything equally after we introduce the apple slices.
Okay.
And just to keep our working space clear, I'm going to park this back.
Are you going to start cooking that now?
No.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that off for now. The apples and the kielbasa cook simultaneously.
Okay.
So if you'd be so kind to help me again, we're going to chop these into thin slices. Now, the recipe calls for it to be cored. I find that sometimes takes a little bit of time, so just a little bit of the old Tewksbury ingenuity. All I do is cut. Well, we'll put that one off on the side, on the table, but take that and then slice it into pieces about that size. Again, I'm looking for the surface area for the cinnamon and brown sugar to coat it.
You do it so neat. I had big chunks.
I had some
I
practice.
had big chunks. When I did.
Some people do prefer the larger chunks like this. I've done them both ways.
Yeah.
But I just find for the sake of the fork or spoon, however you might be eating it, the smaller chunks about this size tend to do a little bit better. And that's all. Just very simple.
Jim's just glad when I make supper and he doesn't get fussy about how I cut the.
Nope, exactly. Because
Exactly.
it's that delicious of a recipe. Most people don't complain. So again, just in the slices, and then fifths or fourths depending on the type of apple. Now I prefer the local apples around here, but I've done it with Fuji apples before and a couple others.
These are the Fujis. Yeah.
And they're a good brand. I would not recommend using a green apple or anything kind of tart. It flies in what the point of the recipe is, which again is all about that fall sweetness.
I've honestly never done it where you do. I'll try. This is how you kind of did it right here, started here.
That's all I did. That's all I did. Like I said, I didn't have a core at home when I first tried this, so I just improvised and adapted.
And I noticed we don't peel it.
No, I do not. The outside softens under the heat, and with the brown sugar and the apple juice also helps. The apple juice really softens things up.
It's acidy.
That's exactly it. The
helps,
acidity helps break down. And again, once the preparation is done, it's impressive in what 20 minutes of cooking can do. So now that we cut the apples into these small, easy to fork and eat sizes, we're just gonna take our kielbasa. Again, I haven't turned it on yet because most kielbasa comes pre-cooked. That's for us. Now, if it was not, this should be warm. It should be cooking on the side, but I choose to follow the recipe, which has pre-cooked kielbasa, and we're gonna take the apples and introduce them into the kielbasa and the gravy, the broth. And again, some people, and there's no wrong way to slice an apple here. Some people prefer to do it in the long, thin slices. It saves a little bit of time if you're in a rush. But again, this makes it kind of more consistent of a coating and allows it to cook a little bit more evenly. So it's really just up to preference. And what I'd like to do is, when I'm at home, add about 1 apple's worth, and then stir it to begin coating. It's a good thing this pan has high sides. You want to be careful at home.
Right, yeah.
And start getting an even mix throughout. And also breaking up. You can tell that I cut some of this kielbasa because it's not all the way through. Some parts are hanging together, but that helps also break them up in the pan. We don't want anything hanging together, apple or kielbasa. And those little extra strands might get broken. So that's about 1 apple's worth. And we'll add in another half worth here.
So would you say we had a little more apple than we needed?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. And again, that's the toughest part because apples, when it calls for 2 apples, it doesn't really give you a weight. It's an approximation. Right. But again, that's also the beauty. If you have family that really enjoys the apple or are picky eaters in that, you can adapt the recipe to your tastes. So, now the hard part's done. Now we get to cook it.
Good, okay. So David, what's going on in Tewksbury?
Well, there's a lot right now. And as folks know, in the end of construction season's buttoning up, I'm sure as they drive up and down Main Street, they see all the crews out there working on the water and sewage and a few other things. So one of the things that we worked on over the last couple months is that eternal problem with Tewksbury Route 38. So there's thankfully plans moving forward, fix from Colonial, which is where right at the corner of almost where the elementary school is for a lot of folks, all the way up to just about here at Bayberry at Old Boston Road. And then also, we're pushing to get the section that is being worked on over by the power lines, where they did the water main project, resurfaced and improved as well. So that was one of the big things.
It's an inconvenience when they're working on it, but it's a good thing when it's done.
It's a little...
we have to have some inconvenience.
Exactly.
But it's worth it in the end.
It's a little bit of pain for a lot of payoff. So if folks are wondering why, we're getting a lot of utility work done because we don't want to rebuild the road and just to have a year later to have them tear it back up.
Smart. Yep, smart.
So yeah, there's a lot of great things going on there. And Rep. Wynn, who I know did a very nice, wonderful dish before, and Senator Feingold and I did the budget a couple months back now, right at the beginning of summer, in which we worked together to get some funding for the Tewksbury Fire Department for all the calls they're making to the state hospital. We brought some state aid to get a 3rd ambulance up around town, so we'll have even better fire medical coverage. And we also got some money to improve down on Livingston Street to keep the kids safe and to expand the parking facilities there. Because it's quite nice. That's where I spent my time playing Little League. And
it even offers more now, David, because now they have the skating area and they have
the splash pad.
The splash pad. Yeah, it's great.
And the water park down there, which is a nice addition.
Yeah.
So with those improvements, hopefully it will increase access for everybody. And as Tewksbury grows and traffic passes through there and there's more kids, we need better signage and crossing grades to keep the kids safe from the drivers passing through. So,
is there anything to say about the new school?
Oh, absolutely. That was another big thing we worked on at the very beginning. Under my predecessor, under Rep. Maselli, I worked there and helped him and the school committee at the time do things like site visits. And Mr. Francis, who was the chair of the school committee at the time, did a wonderful job. He led the Tewksbury Elementary School subcommittee. And he was just an absolute pleasure to work with. He's a very humble, very brilliant guy. So he helped come down, and along with Rep. Wynn and again Senator Feingold and I lobbied the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which is part of our treasury, and it's funded by lotto tickets and a number of other dedicated services. So if you're buying lotto tickets, you now know where your money goes if you don't win. To bring in just about $40 million in reimbursement for our project, and the state was very happy. Treasurer Goldberg was very happy that we are combining 2 elementary schools in one and offering all those kids a first-rate school that has things built into them like computers and other technologies students will have to know in the future, while also cutting the overhead. So instead of having 2 properties to maintain, 2 separate places, 2 separate bus routes, it'll be one.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And we do a lot for the children, but we also do a lot for the seniors too.
That's right.
And this November, we're having a veterans breakfast for all veterans at the senior center.
That's right, and I'll be there for it.
Yeah. Do you remember the date? Is it November 8th or 9th. It's on a Friday.
That's correct. It's
Yeah,
that Friday.
yeah.
It's the first full Friday of the full week. And folks I know can speak to Lisa Downey or Nicole at the Senior Center.
And they need to make reservations in advance so
That's
they'll
right.
have enough food.
And there's another event too, if you don't mind me
Yeah,
advertising.
sure.
Paul Cardello, who's a good friend of mine from Wilmington, runs a nonprofit called the iPods for Wounded Veterans. And what the charity did was initially it brought electronics down to Walter Reed Hospital in Virginia. And that's where our men and women who were injured in the service recovered. Well, they brought down iPods and some e-readers initially, and they were well received because while these soldiers were laying in bed recovering, they were kind of coming up with a case of cabin fever. So the ability to read and listen to music and talk to their friends was very well received. And Paul's small, humble charity has now actually gone almost national. And so he asked, and it will be in November, to host an event at the State House. Any veteran, regardless of age, if they were injured in the line of duty, if they didn't even leave the United States, doesn't matter, it's their day. And that will be in November, it'll be November 1st. We're kicking it off then at 1:30 in the State House. And they can come down. Everybody's guaranteed to win something.
Yeah, that's well deserved. I'm so glad. And just as another aside, we're talking about veterans, is the VA hospital in Bedford, if people have books that they want to get rid of, that they've already read and they're downsizing, they don't have a budget for the library.
That's right.
And they appreciate it so much when you bring those books to the veterans.
They do.
It's a good thing. They even like encyclopedias.
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything. Because while they have a great, wonderful care, and since it's the Veterans Administration itself looking, obviously they're not looking to cut corners. They deliver the absolute best care, and they take care of every veteran as best they can. And I've been over there several times, either helping folks individually from the community, or as I'm on the Committee for Veterans Affairs for the state, as part of site tours and discussions about what the state can do, because that is a federal facility. But we work very closely with them. And board games, books, even old Kindles or DVDs, they're all appreciated because the veterans, sometimes they want a little time to themselves, a little entertainment. They're well received there.
Very good. Good idea.
So we've been very busy so far. The budget was obviously one of the big ones. Currently ongoing in the debate right now, and hopefully soon, because this is probably the second most item that people have written into me about, is the cell phone driving ban. It's just getting worse and worse. And I say that as a relatively younger person out there, there seems to be some naivety that, well, I can text and drive quite safely, which just isn't true. So the House and Senate have a commission right now. They're both negotiating out the details, and they're minor things, and I'm hoping that's going to come through soon. Also, in addition to that, I mean, we've begun debating over what's called the fair funding. And what that relates to is that in Massachusetts, the majority of school budgets are paid for locally. It's always the biggest category in the local budget. And the state will supplement state aid, so no matter how rich or how poor a town is in Massachusetts, there's a minimum standard of money, which can then translate into a minimum number of teachers and quality of education. Well, that hasn't been updated since I was in elementary school. And we just began debating things like increasing the funding for special needs students and students who are learning English for the first time who recently came, as well as just students in general, which will mean a lot of more state aid for Tewksbury or Wilmington. It will help stabilize our property taxes here, and it will make our children better prepared because, let's face it, we're competing not just among towns or states.
Globally,
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth, and that's exactly what it is. Now, I just want to take a moment here and show our viewers, you can start to see as the high heat sets in and the apple juice is absorbed by not just the apple slices but the kielbasa, you can notice the kielbasa is taking a little more of the dark brown, and that's from the brown sugar. That's the sweetness that you and I were talking about earlier. And a little bit of the cinnamon. You can really smell the brown sugar and cinnamon coming through. And if you notice that it's maybe the apple juice is evaporating too fast or it's absorbed too quickly, as you did,
add more.
you can always throw in a little bit more.
Right. Okay, David, it looks fine.
Yeah, it smells delicious. Turns out well.
So this is
the finished product.
Oh boy.
The apples have softened just a little, and you can really smell. That's the other thing I really enjoy about this dish.
It smells like fall.
Exactly. it warms the house, not just with...
Warms the heart too.
Exactly, exactly.
The stomach.
So there's that. And then, like you said, folks at home, depending on their own personal tastes,
Yeah, sweet potato or mashed like you enjoy,
Exactly.
mashed white potatoes.
or mashed white.
And you got quite a bit of juice too. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, you did.
Drizzle extra of the cinnamon and brown sugar and apple juice over the top. And there we are.
Beautiful.
No more than 20 minutes.
Thank you.
And it looks much more
It looks
impressive
beautiful.
than it
Yeah,
actually
beautiful.
is. So I appreciate it. I think, should we dine in?
Yes,
And dig in?
let's go over to the table.
Sounds like a plan. I'll follow you.
Well, we've had another wonderful show, and I want to thank David Robinson, our state representative, for cooking and preparing and this delicious meal.
Well, thank you for welcoming me into your
Yeah.
kitchen. It meant a lot, and it was a blast doing so.
We're honored to have you with us, and I would want to thank Bayberry, of course, for allowing us to use this cafe. It's just worked out so well for us. And our wonderful crew, Jason Marshall and Brian Dorrington, and our executive producer, Donna Gill, and myself, I'm Joan Unger, and I'm glad that you are watching our show. I hope you enjoy it. Any suggestions, any comments, no criticisms, but any positive feedback, we would love it. And you'll see the address, email address at the bottom of the screen. And the recipe too will be on the screen. And thank you for watching us again.
You know, with no criticisms, it sounds like you might be running for office. Thanks again, Joan.
Thank you.